My name is Anya Sharma, and 8 months ago I watched my husband, Dr. Nathan Hayes, walk out of our carefully built life for a woman he believed was his opulent destiny. That same man, the successful plastic surgeon I had put through medical school, called me yesterday, weeping, begging me to help him. He had signed over every penny he owned to his supposed heiress, only to find himself financially wiped out and legally destitute. He had lost everything, while I sat quietly watching the Caribbean sunset from the deck of my new, fully paid-for beach villa. Our life together began with struggle, built on student loans, delayed dreams, and deep exhaustion. For 8 grueling years, I worked 2 jobs to support Nathan through medical school and his residency, managing the bills, the paperwork, and the emotional weight of his ambition. I spent nights proofreading his research papers after my own 10-hour shifts and wore the same 3 suits for years, so he could afford study materials. While he buried himself in anatomy textbooks and clinical rotations, I was quietly building my own career in the world of high-end corporate due diligence and fraud detection, an industry that relies on meticulous research and extreme discretion. By the time Nathan established his lucrative private practice as a plastic surgeon, I had achieved a senior, well-paid position at a private global intelligence firm. We had finally reached the summit we had climbed toward for a decade. We had a beautiful, if modest, home in a quiet, upscale neighborhood, a secure financial foundation, and a shared history of sacrifice. It was a life of earned luxury, built with integrity and the belief that we were partners in every sense. The change began slowly, creeping in with the new wealth. As his practice grew, Nathan started frequenting high society galas and charity events, seeking validation from people whose values were entirely superficial. He began to adopt their mannerisms, their disdain for ordinary work, and their obsession with public display. He began to dismiss my career as boring paperwork, preferring to flaunt his surgical success and his new, leased sports car. He was no longer the humble, dedicated man I married. He was a reflection of the clientele he served, obsessed with surface-level perfection and terrified of irrelevance. The wedge was driven deeper when he met the woman he introduced only as Isabella, a glamorous figure who claimed lineage to an obscure European noble house and boasted a portfolio of vast inherited real estate. She was an immediate, loud declaration of the status Nathan craved, a status my quiet, competent life could never provide. She wore couture that looked expensive but lacked provenance, speaking in a vague, affected accent Nathan found exotic. He was mesmerized by her stories of French chateaux and Napa vineyards, stories that catered perfectly to his newfound desire for aristocracy. The emotional breaking point arrived on a Friday evening. Nathan called me from a penthouse party I hadn't been invited to, his voice slurring with champagne and false importance. He didn't just tell me he was leaving. He delivered a speech he had clearly rehearsed. He told me he was moving out, effective immediately. His reason was simple and crushing. Isabella understood his need for grandeur and legacy, something he claimed I, with my focus on balance sheets and long-term security, could not offer. He claimed our life was too quiet, too grounded, too safe. He sneered at my preference for anonymity, viewing my strategic discretion as a lack of ambition. When I asked about our future, the plans we had made for a family, he laughed, a cold, sharp sound that severed the last thread of my affection. He assured me Isabella's wealth would multiply his own practice tenfold, that they were a power couple in the making. He dismissed my years of loyalty and sacrifice in a single careless sentence, calling me a stepping stone to his real life. I hung up the phone, not in tears, but in a cold, professional shock. I had spent a decade building his future, and he had thrown it away for a gilded fantasy. Have you ever experienced such a swift, devastating dismissal of years of effort? The sting of being called not enough after giving everything is an injustice that settles deep into the bone. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. My phase of struggle was not financial, it was existential. I had to mourn the death of my marriage while activating the survival instincts my profession had honed. I filed for divorce immediately, surprising him with the speed and the terms. I asked for only one thing, my freedom and our golden retriever, Archimedes. I refused spousal support and made no claim on the practice or the marital home. My lawyer thought I was insane, urging me to fight for half of the millions I had helped him earn, but I insisted. My professional life had prepared me for this kind of calculated detachment. The world saw a wronged wife granting an exceptionally easy divorce, rolling over for the powerful doctor. But in reality, I was laying a trap baited with indifference. My firm specialized in identifying complex financial fraud, and my personal skills were world-class. I dedicated the next few weeks to one personal case. Isabella. I didn't rely on Google or social media. I went deep into the international banking registers and property ownership databases that require clearance to access. Using my secure databases, I ran a deep, silent check on her supposed legacy. The results were professionally gratifying. Isabella was not an heiress to a European fortune. She was a notorious low-profile con artist named Elena, with a documented history of targeting successful, newly wealthy professionals in London, Dubai, and New York. She specialized in prestige fraud, creating an illusion of immense wealth to convince partners to merge assets, only to drain the liquidity and vanish. Her supposed family trusts were a web of shell corporations in non-extradition jurisdictions used to launder money, and her real estate portfolio was either non-existent or severely leveraged. Her fortune was a meticulously crafted mirage.
Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Turn on bell notification to stay updated for more revenge stories.
Supported by maxed-out credit cards and the liquidated assets of her previous victims. She was currently being investigated by authorities in 2 different countries, but she moved fast enough to stay ahead of the law. Nathan wasn't marrying into royalty, he was marrying into a criminal investigation. The knowledge transformed my pain into a turning point of certainty. I stood at a crossroads. I could warn him, show him the dossier I had compiled, and likely be dismissed as a jealous, bitter ex-wife trying to sabotage his happiness. Or I could step back. I realized that Nathan's arrogance was so consuming that he would never believe me over the fantasy Isabella was spinning. He had called me a stepping stone. Now he would see what happens when you step off the path of integrity. I didn't need to fight Nathan. I needed only to allow the natural consequence of his vanity to unfold. The legal exposure for a professional like Nathan to be involved with a known international fraudster was immense, a risk he was too self-absorbed to see. The emotional battle was over. The financial endgame was inevitable. My strategy shifted entirely from defense to observation. I used my severance and a strategic liquidation of my private stock holdings, assets Nathan had never bothered to inquire about, to quietly purchase a luxury villa in a low-tax, high-privacy island nation. It was a move of decisive, independent security. I sold our modest marital home quickly, netting a clean 7-figure sum that only added to my freedom. I watched from a distance as Nathan, desperate to prove his new relationship was superior, willingly bought a sprawling, hyper-modern mansion at Isabella's request, signing his name to a debt load that swallowed his profits whole. Poetic justice was not an outcome I had to force. It was a consequence I only needed to permit. The plan entered the execution phase when Nathan fully committed to his own destruction. I monitored the situation through public records. Isabella, having gained his trust through flattery and the promise of doubling his fortune, convinced him to consolidate his assets into a joint investment vehicle. She persuaded him to sign over majority ownership of his lucrative practice and all personal liquid assets into a complex partnership structure she controlled, guaranteeing her a controlling stake if the partnership dissolved. He signed documents without proper counsel, blinded by the promise of access to her global network. I watched the movement of assets through my private monitoring systems, seeing millions transfer from his secure, insured accounts into the black hole of Isabella's shell companies in the Caymans. He was doing my work for me, signing away his future to prove his new life was better than the old one. My goal was no longer revenge, but simply to remain solvent and invisible. I retired from my firm early, claiming burnout, and relocated to my secure, elegant property overlooking the ocean, taking my quiet competence and my significant personal fortune with me. I spent my days reading, swimming with Archimedes, and checking my monitoring system once a week, just to confirm the erosion of Nathan's wealth. The climax arrived 6 months later, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a simple notification on my phone screen. Nathan Hayes was calling. I let it ring twice before I answered, my voice calm, almost detached. He was calling from a cheap burner phone, his voice ragged, thick with uncontrolled tears. He spoke for 5 agonizing minutes, detailing the horror. Isabella had vanished overnight. The house was stripped of art and valuables. His accounts were drained to zero, and she had leveraged the practice's assets for loans he was now personally liable for. He had gone to the bank to find his access revoked and had come home to find a letter from the authorities regarding an investigation into money laundering connected to the accounts he had signed his name to. He was destitute, facing financial ruin, professional disgrace, and potential criminal charges. He wept openly, begging me for help, for advice, for money, relying on the old loyalty I supposedly still carried. He asked, his voice breaking, how he could have been so blind, and then, with a dawn of realization, he asked if I had known. I let a long, calculated sigh hang between us, the sound of the gentle waves washing the shore audible in the background. I took a sip of my iced tea, feeling the cool condensation on the glass. My voice, when it came, was soft and final. "You lacked the killer instinct, Nathan," I said, using the exact phrase his previous boss had once used on a client. "To recognize a simple liability. You traded a partner who built you up for a parasite that tore you down. I tracked her fraud the week you left me. I knew exactly who she was." I heard him gasp on the other end, the realization of my silence hitting him harder than any scream could have. "I am not your assistant anymore. I am not the one you left behind. I am the one who survived you." He started to plead again, trying to grasp at the last sliver of my patience, invoking the years we spent in that small apartment, trying to weaponize the nostalgia I had already buried. I looked at the dog sleeping peacefully at my feet, a symbol of the true loyalty I rescued from the wreckage. Without another word, I lifted my finger and simply pressed the end call button. My victory was not loud. It was the quiet, serene sound of a phone disconnecting a past I no longer recognized. The feeling of finally resting in absolute, untroubled independence is a peace I could never have found remaining as Mrs. Nathan Hayes. He chased an illusion of status, believing that true wealth was loud and inherited, dismissing my own earned security as boring. He lost everything because he refused to believe that intelligence and quiet work could ever surpass superficial glamour. He is now navigating public defenders and bankruptcy courts, while I navigate the tides and the sunrise. Today I don't feel bitterness, only a profound clarity. I used my unique skill set, the one he once mocked as paperwork, to secure my own destiny while he signed away his. My goal was never revenge. It was to prove that true security is built on competence, not vanity. That knowledge, bought with my patience and sealed by his own catastrophic choices, is a luxury that money cannot buy. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to enjoy more revenge and inspiring stories like this one. Where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and tell us what you think about this story.
Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, turn on bell notification to stay updated for more revenge stories.